All right, and we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special workshop that I am so excited for. I just had the privilege of meeting Sarah a few moments ago backstage, but Hank, you have had the privilege of chatting with Sarah a couple times before, at
I
least.
have, and we actually bumped into each other at Author Nation last week. It
Yeah,
was,
that was so fun.
yeah, what a wonderful surprise to turn around and there's Sarah standing
Well,
there in the flesh.
well, for everyone joining us, this is a guest workshop put on by the awesome Sarah Cannon, indie author extraordinaire, if I may say. But before I let Hank introduce you, Sarah, and before we give you the floor to take it away, I do just want to let everyone know that this sort of guest workshop and our own like in-house workshops that we put on are part of the Dabble Premium experience. And so every month we have at least one workshop going on. Sometimes we'll bring in a guest to buff up our sphere of expertise and bring in new perspective and share things that we could only dream of. And we've done workshops from character development to magic systems to author websites to dialogue. But I am so pumped to just learn from you, Sarah, and get some of your expertise in using the joy in writing to attract readers and just make your writing better. So for the 60-day novel challenge and for NaNoWriMo, we are opening up this normally exclusive Dabble Premium event to all authors, anyone who wants to join us. And yeah, I'm just really excited. So Hank, I'll let you take it away from here.
Thank you, Doug. In our chat, thanks everyone who is tuned in and who has the chat popping off as always. We love to see it. NJ West said, I am loving Sarah's bookshelf. Sarah, I must say that is a phenomenal bookshelf behind you. That's so aesthetically pleasing. It's amazing. Sarah, we have we've done a show together. If you will post a link in the show notes later where you can go back and watch our interview with Sarah. But Sarah, your first book was a NaNoWriMo project. Am I right in remembering that?
Yeah, it was actually. So back in 2010, my very first book I wrote, No One Will Ever Read. That one was written in 2008. And I just jumped right into NaNoWriMo and had no plot, no idea what I was doing. But I wrote 50,000 words and it was a win. It was a start. And I have written many novels in November since then. So it has been a good journey.
Amazing. And you have been a professional author for over a decade now, sold many copies of your books. And we're so excited that you agreed to come and do this workshop for us. So I'm going to pop up your slides on the screen here. And then Doug and I are going to step off and let you take it away. Thank you for doing this for us, Sarah.
All
Thank you so
right.
much.
Hello, everybody. So I just clicked over to the comments so I can see you. I'm so excited to talk about joy. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through a little bit of a workshop to talk about why joy is important and how it can make such a difference in your writing, as well as obviously your enjoyment of this career. So who here used to dream of being a writer? Like if you can really think and just close your eyes for a minute. Hopefully you're alone. Close your eyes, put your hand on your heart, and just think like, can you remember back to a time when you just dreamed of having a bookshelf full of your own books, when you dreamed of being a writer and being able to do this? Now, some of you may be published. Some of you may not yet be published. You might still be working on your first book. You might be several books in. You might be working on getting an agent. But there was a time when this seemed really, yeah, if you're at work, maybe you don't want to close your eyes, but you could just kind of listen in. But just thinking about and connecting with that time when you first realized this is something I really, really want to do. And it is one of those moments when you start thinking about, okay, there was a time when this was really what I wanted to do. And now you have the opportunity in your life to do it, whether you're doing it professionally yet or not. This is your opportunity. And there has never been a better time to get your work out there because there are so many paths to success when it comes to writing. And for many of us, that process of getting into our work is something that we have lost our connection with. And I asked that question of, is this how you thought it would feel? Because for many of us, when we start thinking about our writing, maybe we're working full-time jobs and we're feeling overworked. And by the time we get home from work, there's just nothing left in the tank. Or we're overwhelmed. Maybe you want to be an indie author and it just feels like there's so much to learn that it's very difficult to get it all done. Or maybe you're just burned out. Maybe you've been writing the same series for a while. Maybe you've been working on the same book for a really long time and it just feels like you're starting to lose that connection. Or maybe some of us are feeling a little bit uncertain, where we aren't really sure what our path is going to be, whether anyone's going to love our books, whether we're going to be able to make money at this. And sometimes for many of us, this comes with a lot of feelings that can start to build negative momentum, like I'm always behind. It'll get better when I finish this book and finally get an agent. Or maybe there's that uncertainty and doubt of like, I'm not sure I really have what it takes. Or I worked so hard to get here and I'm too tired to maintain it. And I'm sure in the comments, we could see that there's all different versions of this story. So some of us are maybe pre-published. Some of us are still working toward that. Some people may be published. But this really isn't the dream of what we want as writers. So I want you to think about your journey kind of like a road trip. And what I like to think of as your life vision is like your GPS system. This is really where you want to go as an author. And then the route you take is the actions that you take to try to get there. And then the vehicle that you're driving is you, right? And when we think about that journey, we think cars that are refueled and maintained with care just keep going, right? They keep moving forward, whether you hit obstacles or you have detours along the way. As long as you continue to take care of yourself and you're doing what you love, you're going to be able to keep going on this journey until you find that success that you want. But cars that are pushed too hard or don't get refueled or just aren't maintained eventually will stop moving forward. And if we pour sand in our gas tank, that car eventually will break down. And one of the main reasons that I want to talk about joy is because there are a lot of things in our world and in our lives that can act like either we're running on fumes, hey, Rita, or that we just literally can't keep moving forward because we're doubting ourselves. We aren't seeing the results that we want to see. We haven't finished the book yet, even though we've been working on it. Maybe there are people in our lives that don't support what we're doing. There's all kinds of reasons why we start to break down our joy, our reason why we got started on this. We don't really want to feel overworked, overwhelmed, burned out, or uncertain. So for some of us, it might be pressure to go faster, might be lack of control over the industry, compromising our true desires. This was something that was true for me, that I really wanted to write young adult fantasy, but a lot of people kept saying, you can't make money doing that. It's too hard. You should write this other thing. And I kept ping-ponging around thinking, I don't know that I trust myself enough to write the thing I really want to write. So I was writing what other people told me to write, and I never found success with that. It wasn't until I decided to follow my own desire of what to write that I started finding success. Maybe we're living in fear or increased anxiety about what if I can't make this work, or what if I can't finish, or not yet seeing the desired result of your investment. For some people, it could be isolation or feeling left out, lack of support. Comparison. This is another thing that I used to really struggle with, that no matter what I was working on, I started to look at other people and think, gosh, they're really doing so much better than me. And I don't know if I can compete with that. And it wasn't until I was able to step away from that comparison that I started to find my joy. Maybe you're overworked, either from a full-time job or you've just been working in this indie industry for a long time, and it can be very difficult. Something I didn't put on the list is also grief. So sometimes we're going through a lot in our own personal lives, and that can affect the joy that we're able to put into our work because we've lost a loved one, or we have lost a home, or other things that have happened in our lives make us feel a little bit less connected. So when we start thinking about what we're doing with our time, tasks equals time and energy is a equation that I come back to a lot, that we have the task that we're doing and we need time and energy to get it done. And a lot of times when we start putting this on our plate, we start thinking about the tasks that need to get done, but we don't really think about how much time and energy it's going to take to get everything done. But the truth is, and this is all going to come back to joy and bringing in readers. The truth is that time is finite. Like, we only have so much time. We only have the time we have. And if you have a lot of responsibilities and you have a full-time job, or you have someone that you're caretaking for, you have less time than someone who doesn't have those responsibilities. And you can't invent more time. It just is what it is. Energy is variable. So some days you wake up full of energy and some days you wake up with a cold, like I did from Author Nation. That's why I have my tea here, because my voice is a little raspy. But potential tasks that we can do to get ourselves moving forward with our writing and our writing careers are infinite. So a lot of times what happens is we have all these tasks, all these words we want to write, all this marketing we want to do, all these agents we want to reach out to, or market research or learning that we want to do, but we have not as much time as we wish. And then the more we put on our plates, the less and less energy we have access to. And that can often feel like, whether we're just talking about our writing or we're talking about everything in our lives, we're carrying heavier and heavier burdens, often with fewer desired results. And we keep adding tasks to our plate and wondering why we can't live up to our own expectations. And this often creates a toxic cycle of self-betrayal, self-loathing, stress, and worst of all, a lot of times, unintentional sacrifices. So a lot of times what we can do is sacrifice things like our physical health to get our writing done, or our mental health to keep pushing, to keep comparing ourselves, to keep shifting what we're writing to match what other people want, or listening to comparison or toxic advice from other people. Sometimes we end up sacrificing our relationships because we are, consistently trying to get this writing done, and we're focusing on that so much that we're sacrificing things like that, feelings of safety. So sometimes we're pouring so much time and money into our work that we feel like, what if it doesn't pay off? Sometimes lifelong dreams are getting sacrificed, or personal values, sometimes our confidence. And of course, this comes back to joy. But when we think about our writing, and what is this energy you speak of? When we think about our writing, the most magnetic thing that we have, and this, I've been self-published and writing since 2007, self-published since 2010. I've sold over 1 million copies of my books. And each of those sales came from books that I loved to write. And the books that I wrote because someone else told me, this is what you should write, this is what's going to sell. Like, we have a combination really of the fact that we need to kind of keep an eye on the market, especially if you want to be traditionally published, because there's a market out there. They're going to only buy books that they believe are going to sell, right? And then if you're an indie author, of course, you do have to pay attention to the market. But at the same time, or if I saw we had some people here that are hybrid and are doing a little bit of both, we have to consider the market. But the most magnetic thing that we have in our writing is our enjoyment of it. And the more you can just pour everything you love about your books, the characters you love, the storylines you love, the themes that you explore, the more you can really pour that into your writing with passion and energy, the more people are going to resonate and love your work. And when we strip the joy out of our work because we're overworked, comparing ourselves, we are feeling doubt, the more we're taking away the one thing that readers will love. So what we're going to talk about right now is 10 ways to reclaim your joy. So if you've been looking for ways to really light yourself up again about your writing, I can promise you that if you start implementing some of these things, I did this last year, I call it the writer reset, because I started to find that all the things that were going on in my life, moving house, having small children, trying to run multiple businesses was just getting so hard to find the passion and love for my writing again. And I watched my sales go down, and I wanted to get back to a place where I was making multiple six figures as a writer. And it wasn't going to come for me from manipulating the market or anything like that. It had to come from my own joy as a writer. And so we're going to give some strategies on how to do that. So tip number one is to really light yourself up. So what sparks your own joy? When you think about the most magnetic stories that you could write, it really comes down to what is the thing that lights you up as a storyteller. And when we start to infuse all of those things into our work, it can be the most magnetic thing for readers, because the chances are, if you love a trope or you love a certain type of character or a certain setting or a certain historical period, the more you're able to pour your joy into that story, the more readers are going to love it too. So what do you love about the process of writing that feels indulgent? So this is a picture of a writing retreat I went on at the Gaylord Texan last year, where for me, if I can get my notebooks around me, I can really just dive into the stationery side of it, like anybody else, a paper planner like me. I love really just pouring all my joy into the process itself. And then when it comes to the story, I love to go back to the things that I most love. So remember I said young adult, that was the thing that I wanted. And a lot of people told me, no, don't write young adult. You can't make any money doing that. But all of the books that you see behind you, I've written 30 books, and most of them are young adult novels. And they have resonated with my readers because it was something I loved. I loved exploring that coming of age theme. I loved the haunted house and the witchiness and the crystals and other things. And the more I poured what I loved into those stories, the more successful they were. So for you, if you're trying to spark that joy in your process and really infuse everything you're doing with joy, it could be the tools you use. So it could be the software, it could be the pens, the pencils, the stationery, the plotting software you use. It could be the music you listen to. Maybe you do. Does anybody here do playlists for your stories? The music that you're listening to as you write. It could be where you're writing. So going out to coffee shops, or my most recent novel is called The Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw. And it is about a girl who disappears, and all of her friends come back together 1 year later to try to figure out kind of what happened to Vanessa. Valentine says, I love mystery so much. This is the first time I've ever given it a real chance, but everyone told me I needed to write fantasy. Yeah, so you're going to hear that sometimes of like, this is what you should do. And it's usually well-meaning advice, but I have found for myself that when I followed my own heart, it was a real lesson in this is what's really going to sell best for me. And so I was working on this book, and it is set in a cabin in the woods. And I went to a cabin in the woods to work on it. And I kind of scared myself a little bit, but man, did it reignite my joy of why I love telling stories like this that are spooky and atmospheric and twisty and fast paced. So when was the last time you tried kind of a new setting or resetting your desk? It could be writing a new story just for you. Instead of writing what you've always been told you should write, just really and truly giving yourself permission to write the thing that you most want to write. It could be your cozy atmosphere, like lighting a candle or snuggling up in a blanket. It could be tea in a fancy cup. It could be wearing a certain outfit while you're writing. It could be decorating your desk in a certain way. I love colorful spaces, so my desk is always kind of Hello Kitty'd, and this fits my YA vibe, but you may have a completely different vibe. Another thing for me in terms of what lights me up is I went back to really think about what were the books and things that inspired me to want to be a writer in the first place. So for me, it was things like Christopher Pike or Veronica Mars. I Know What You Did Last Summer, that sort of twisty-turny horror teen books and movies. And then Fatal Frame, video games that are survival horror. I loved watching and playing those things. And so, thank you, Rita says, I loved Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw. So really going back to what lights you up. And I know that we don't hear this in the advice as often as I wish we did. But so many people will tell you, got to write what sells. This is a business. And they're right. But at the same time, if you can find that combination of writing what you truly love and also finding something that sells. So Kamina, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. I was told not to waste my time on fan fiction because it does not pay the bills. But one of the type of characters I truly love is from a work that has long lost its copyright and now I can play. And if it sells, that's a plus. And, somebody might have a perspective where they say, don't waste your time on fan fiction. But the truth is there are a lot of really huge, like multi-million selling works that have come from fan fiction. There are authors that are some of the 50 million selling authors that have come from a fan fiction background. And so in the end, yes, we have to be smart about how we're approaching our careers as authors. But for me, my advice is always to say, start with that seed or that kernel of what really brings you joy. Because when we talk about what's going to sell the best and what's going to resonate most with readers, it's going to be the thing that lights you up. Because if it lights you up, they're going to sense that and they're going to feel like magnetic, attracted to it, because it's something that you loved to create. So if you feel like you've lost connection with that, or you've spent a lot of time writing what other people told you, or writing out of fear that what you love is not going to sell, go back to the things that you love and start infusing your work and give yourself permission to write what you love. Another point here about getting back to joy, number 2, is to get realistic about your time. And this means really thinking about how much time you really have on your hands. Because I love to plan in 90 days. And what I used to find that I would do is I would think about a project in terms of 90 days. I would say, oh, could I finish this book in 90 days? That seems reasonable. I could probably finish a rough draft. But then I would think about, oh, I got to get my website going. Could I do that in 90 days? Oh, I think I could do that in 90 days. And then I would pick another project and say, oh, I really want to start my Instagram too. And I want to start building followers over there. So I've got 90 days to do it. And I wouldn't think about it as a whole. I would just keep adding more and more projects to my plate and expecting myself to do them all in the same 90 days. So when I'm already starting to think about what am I going to do January, February, March, Q1 of 2025. And my temptation is to take all the projects I want to work on and just cram them all in that 90 days. And what I started to realize was that I was always feeling overwhelmed and feeling like, why is my Instagram not growing? Why is my book so hard to get written? And the reason was because I was basically putting 540 days worth of stuff to do in 90 days. I was expecting myself to do massive amounts of work in a small period of time. And I wonder if anybody here can create or can relate to this, where you've got so much that you want to do. You've got so many stories you want to write. You want to build up your social media. You want to learn about how to publish. You want to start working on your marketing or whatever it may be. And you start to realize, oh my gosh, I don't actually have time to do everything I want to do. And that in and of itself can start to feel like it weighs us down. And being busy all the time is not the same thing as being productive. And so when we put so much on our plate, it can really start to steal the joy that we have for our writing. And like I said earlier, the joy is the most magnetic thing you have. And so if you really push yourself down and you say, I'm just going to try to get it all done as fast as possible. I'm going to try to write as fast as I can. I'm going to set up my website. I'm going to apply for these agents. I'm going to, we just keep piling those tasks on our plate. We start to weigh ourselves down so much that we start to lose confidence and belief in ourselves. So number 3 tip is to set closer targets. This is for those of us in the group here that are, really struggling with, I've got a big goal that I want to reach. Like I just want to be published, or if I could just have that one main breakout book, or if I could just finish my novel. For some of you, it might be, I want to make my first 6 figures. We're probably all at different levels, but you have that target that you're trying to hit. And sometimes it's kind of a long-term target, or it's something that's not very well defined. Like, I just want to be successful, or I just want to be a writer. Well, sometimes it can feel like we're standing on the other side of like a large bay and a city in between, and we've got a goal that is so far out we can barely see it from where we are. Like, for example, if you're currently working a full-time job and you haven't finished your first novel, maybe your dream is to quit your job and be publishing full-time. But as you are writing, it's taking so long to finish that book, to start seeing money, to start figuring it out, that it feels like that dream is so far away, right? And so we start to sometimes lose hope, right? It's like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to hit that? Well, from that distance, when you're feeling the gap between where you are and where you want to be, you could literally have a bow and arrow and shoot at that target over and over and over again a million times. And you're never going to hit that target from where you're standing. It's just too far away. And over time, that inability to see the progress, to hit the target, starts to lead to exhaustion, self-doubt, compromise. Okay, well, maybe I can't write mystery. Maybe I can't write fan fiction. Unintentional sacrifices, like we talked about earlier, sometimes it can lead to fear, anxiety, even panic. Like, oh my gosh, I'm almost this age, or I'm almost like been working on this book for this many years. What if I can never make it? And we start to allow ourselves to spiral. Burnout, that's very common among writers. We start to perceive that our years of working on this book or working toward this career or trying to learn to be a writer as failure, or as we're not good enough, or we're never going to get there. I saw somebody in the comments said that is how it feels, of like, as if everybody else knows how to do it and I'm just dumb. We can start to say things like that about ourselves, and it sends us into a negative spiral. It burns us out. It kills our joy. And when we were talking about the car, like imagining that your journey as an author is like a car, all that negativity in our brains, like if we're telling ourselves you're not good enough, you can't figure this out, you're never going to get there, that's like pouring sand in our gas tank. We're literally holding ourselves back from what we really want. And it's like self-sabotage. Jessica says, there you go again, Sarah, peeking into my brain. Hey, Jessica, I really needed this today. I'm so glad to hear that. Kara also says, I'm in the position where I'd literally have to be an overnight millionaire to get out of the trap of needing to keep my income under $1,500 a month so I don't lose disability. That is such a difficult trap. And I'm sure that that causes stress, right? Because if you make too much money, you're going to lose disability. If you don't make enough, you're not going to be able to afford where you are. And I know that probably a lot of people here that are watching have their own version of this is what I'm scared of. And that can seep into our writing, that we feel like we have to manipulate our writing. We have to try to make it as marketable as possible, or we feel really uncertain about what path we want to take. And all of that focus on the fear and anxiety, while natural and completely understandable, starts to take away the magic and the sparkle of what is unique about you and your writing. So one thing, talking about those faraway targets, is that we're reaching for these really difficult to hit targets. We're thinking so far out. Like, what if we're worrying about problems. Like, you ever heard someone say, I'm borrowing problems from tomorrow? When we don't follow through, then we blame ourselves, or we think we're dumb. We think we're never going to get there, that we're not good enough. And the truth is, the plan that we had, the target that we're trying to hit, is impossible to begin with. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. Everybody that you see that has figured out the marketing side or sold millions of books, they did it incrementally, one step at a time. It's just that we only see the final result, right? We don't see how much struggle went into that, how much sacrifice went into it. So when we compare ourselves to those people, it feels like we're missing some kind of secret ingredient or some kind of key. So the key to this for me is to realize that even though it's good to have those long-term goals, to also understand that trying to jump from where we are now, like let's say you're just finishing your first novel, to, being a six-figure author or whatever it is your dream is, it's that target is too far away. So one of the things that you can do to increase your joy and to get out of that stress response is to simply move the target closer and make it easier to hit. So instead of focusing on goals that are really far out in the distance. Like I said, if you've finished, let's say 2 books and you've sold 100 copies, instead of setting your goal of like, I want to be a 6-figure author, let's move that target closer and begin to build positive momentum instead of trying to hit a target that's so far away, it feels impossible. So instead of expecting yourself to wake up tomorrow and be superhuman, you create a plan that meets you where you are. So a plan that's exciting and achievable, where the targets, like your goals, your projects that you're taking on, are so easy and so close you almost can't miss. So in the example of you've got 2 books out, you've sold 100 copies, which by the way would be amazing. Let's say next year, instead of selling 100 copies, I want to sell 300 copies. That is a achievable goal, instead of saying I want to go from 100 to 100,000. Now you might, I was just talking to an author at Author Nation who actually went from making $30,000 a year to making $900,000 the next year. So sometimes those quantum leaps do happen in our careers when something just takes off, but expecting that to happen and then blaming ourselves when it doesn't is not really going to bring joy. So if we can release the stress and just say, I'm going to set a target for myself that feels interesting but achievable, I gasped too, but it happens. And I'm telling you, you never know. You never know. Number 4, add more joyful non-work into your life. So I know that probably most of us have less free time than we wish we had, but sometimes especially if you do have a full-time job or you have a lot on your plate, sometimes we think, okay, I have to make the most of every minute that I have available. And we've got laundry to do. We've got, tons of people that are expecting us to help out, or we've got, lots of things that we need to do that are responsibilities. But in order to infuse our writing with joy, we also have to refill our own well. So ask yourself, if you're feeling burned out, when was the last time you took a true non-working vacation? Or you went a whole day or weekend without working, that you just filled your cup with reading or with watching your favorite TV show and not feeling guilty about it. Some of you might have this on lockdown. You might be doing lots of self-care and refilling your well, but there's probably some people here that are not very good at this, including me. When was the last time you really talked to a friend about things outside of your work, or went to a coffee shop just to read or just hang out, or roller skating, dancing, something really fun, volunteered in your community? Scheduling fun into your calendar at least once a month, going back to the games you used to love, the books you used to love, finding ways to refill your own well. At Author Nation, I actually talked about some people I've seen on TikTok are talking about doing dopamine menus. And I think this is really interesting. It's this idea of like an appetizer is something really short and sweet, and then full main course is something that might take a little bit longer. And I was thinking, this could be used for a refilling the well menu as well. So like appetizers could be small things like going for a walk or having a cup of tea. And then the main course could be things like watching an entire movie or sitting down and reading a book for a couple of hours and just really letting yourself indulge. I love the word indulge, where you just say, I am going to allow myself to do something because it's fun and it makes me feel full of creativity and excitement. So going back to the things that originally made you want to be a writer, that inspired you to be a writer. For me, like I said, it's video games, it's reading. And I started to notice the busier I got, the less reading I was doing. And then I started to wonder, or started to put those two things together of like, the less I read, the less I'm writing. And so allowing ourselves to, like, you've heard people say that, like kind of old cliche or whatever of you can't pour from an empty cup. A lot of times we're trying to force ourselves to write when we just really have nothing left to give. So just letting yourself just indulge in the fun again. That can help bring back your joy. Tip number 5 is to perform a digital detox or a digital declutter. So a digital detox is basically stepping away from the internet or the online world entirely for a stretch of time. So this could be 24 hours, it could be 1 week, or even a month if you could do it. I don't know that I could do a month, but set your own boundaries before you start and make a plan for yourself. So if you are somebody who is struggling with a lot of news going on, or you've got a lot of people in your social media that are kind of feeling down or aren't supporting your work in some way, or you're starting to really compare yourself a lot because it seems like everybody else has it figured out, this might be a good tip for you to just say, okay, I'm going to step away. Because one thing I started to realize with my phone is that even when I would go out to a coffee shop to write, which is something I typically love to do, I would say, oh, you know what? I better create some content for my YouTube channel. So let me record a quick YouTube short. And at this point, my phone is out. And then I get distracted because there's a lot of apps that are designed to distract us away from whatever work we were going to be doing. So then I'll be like, okay, while I'm posting this to YouTube, let me watch this quick video, or let me get stuck in this, Facebook loop for a little while. And I started realizing that I was spending my time that I had, my precious time that I had for writing, focusing on Instagram reels or getting sucked into some other kind of social media. And a lot of times for me in the past, I have worked on this a lot in terms of my own mental health, but I used to really start comparing myself a lot to other people, like, wow, she got more likes on her comments than I did, or wow, that person's YouTube channel is growing a lot faster than mine. And I would just constantly end up in negative cycle. And sometimes what would happen is I would click on that YouTube video and someone will have left me a negative comment. And then I have a hard time getting my writing done because that negative comment is in my head. D. Williams says, I've been using a minimalist phone for a couple of months, eliminates the eye-catching app icons, makes me set time limits on app usage, and has just made me use my phone less as a result. I love that. So actively putting restrictions on your phone. Something that I ended up doing, it's a little bit extra, is I bought a second phone. So this is my work phone. It has my social media on it. And this phone gets put away at 5 p.m. or sometimes when my kids get home at 3:30. This phone has no email, no social media, but at least if I've got it with me when I'm writing, my husband can text me or my kids can send me a message if they need me. But it is, hey, Heather, but it can be helpful to do a little bit of a digital detox. Now, that can mean completely stepping away from the internet for a little while and giving yourself periods of time where you don't have all that input that may make you feel negative, or is kind of taking away some of your creative energy or your ability to focus, because a lot of these apps are specifically designed to interrupt our focus. It can also mean just going through your social media and snoozing people that are specifically feeling kind of triggering to your comparisonitis. So if there's that author that you started writing with at the same time and they've just really taken off and you are just still struggling with your first book and it makes you feel negative about yourself, it's not that person's fault. Obviously, you're happy for them. But if it makes you feel negative, maybe snoozing them for 30 days and giving yourself a little bit of break from that comparison. Some of the benefits of a digital detox are things like improved ability to focus, more restful sleep, decreased anxiety and stress, increased connection with your in-person relationships, reducing eye strain. And a digital declutter, we talked about the digital detox is completely cutting it out. Declutter is unfollowing or snoozing people that kind of make you feel like FOMO or stress or comparison. I have a friend, Ronnie Lauren, that did a 30-day digital detox where all she was able to do is like read blog posts, but she didn't allow herself any social media. And she said she got so much done during that time, and it was kind of like a brain reset. And she spent a lot of that time just refilling her own well and sort of disconnecting from the online world for a while. And it was super, super helpful. And Kim says, perhaps we can view our writing as if we were a surgeon. We can hope a surgeon wouldn't be on the phone during surgery. So focus on what's important. Yeah. So when we're writing, maybe putting some things in place, like I have an app called Freedom that you can install onto your desktop and your phone. And with one click, it will shut off the internet sites other, like I have a exception for Google Docs or for some of my like YouTube, so that I can listen to music or Focus FM or something. So you can keep some sites on. So if you're using Dabble, for example, you can keep that going, but you would turn off like Facebook and other social medias so that you can really focus on your writing, and you can't turn it off. So that has been a good app. So finding ways to kind of hack your digital devices. Number 6 is to try new strategies. So we've all heard that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. But when we think about our joy in our writing, sometimes we can get stuck in a rut where it's like, man, I used to really just write a lot. And I've found lately that I'm feeling really slow, or the writing, the ideas just aren't coming. Maybe you need to shake it up a little bit, do something a little bit different and say, you know what, I'm going to go try writing at a coffee shop. I'm going to try listening to music, or I'm going to try silence. I'm going to try writing with friends. I'm going to try a new type of software, or I'm going to try a different way of plotting. But if you find that you're feeling a little bit stuck and you can't access the fun of writing or the flow of writing, try something a little bit different and try shaking it up just a little bit. Tip number 7 is basically from a Michael Jordan quote where he said, focus like a laser, not a flashlight. So if you think about a flashlight, we've got a very wide range of where that light is going. But if we think about a laser, it's just a pinpoint of light, very, very focused in on one specific point. So sometimes when we're stuck in a rut, or we found ourselves kind of focusing on a lot of different things, like maybe I should write this, maybe I should write this, should I write a series? And we find ourselves sort of popcorning around or ping-ponging around to different ideas or different things. Sometimes really what we need is to just make a decision and say, this is where I'm going to focus. I'm not going to think about how I'm going to publish this. I'm not going to think about money. I'm not going to think about Instagram. I'm just really going to focus on, this is the book I want to finish. And you don't have to make a decision for life. You don't have to say, this is the genre I'm going to write forever. But sometimes when we're just letting our focus get really scattered, the best way back to joy and confidence is to just focus like a laser and say, I'm going to get this done. And I was telling you guys about my book, Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw. It took me 2 years to write that book. And I felt like at all turns that I was focusing on so many different things, and I just kept wanting so badly to finish the book, but the ideas weren't coming. And when I finally decided, you know what, everything else is going to take a back seat because I want to finish this book, I decided to focus like a laser, and I used every tool at my disposal. I did more digital detoxing. I snoozed people. I said no to opportunities, and I said, this is the thing that I'm going to focus on. I also pulled out some tools, like gamifying, for example. We don't have time in this workshop to go into all of it, but one of the things that I started doing was to gamify it is I got 2 jars, and this for me is just a little thing, but I got 2 jars and I labeled one to do and one done. And I bought these little vase fillers. They're just like little gemstones. You could use anything. You could use beans or coins or anything you want. And each one represents a chapter. And so as I was going through my edits, I put the number of chapters that I had left to work on in my edits into one jar. And then as I would complete it, I would move it from this jar to the other jar. And just that little sound, that focus tool of saying, okay, this is how many I have left to do, and I get to see the positive momentum of watching this fill up, that simple little act helped me focus because it was a visual way of seeing how much work I had left to do and how much I had already accomplished. And so finding ways to sort of hack your own brain to get excited and to get focused can be super helpful. Another thing that I use as a focus tool is sticky notes. So on the wall, on your mirror, in your planner, make a sticky note for every chapter that you want to write or every 1,000 words you want to write, and put it right front and center. And every time you finish one, pull the sticky note off. Stuff like that that can help you, especially if you're a visual person or if you're a checklist person, you could use that. Valentine says, gamifying has been my secret weapon this month. Dabble's little pop-up when you hit your daily goal has been next level. There's just something about that positive momentum of that reinforcement, like you did it, you finally followed through, can really help focus. Thank you for sharing that. But go all in on the most exciting idea that you have, like something that will hold your focus. It is really difficult to focus on a story idea you don't love. Like someone mentioned earlier, they were told not to write fan fiction, right? Well, if fan fiction is the thing that you love the most, you're going to be more likely to show up for that, right? Those characters that you love and putting your own spin on their world. Or, for example, if mystery, like you said, somebody else said, mystery is what they really wanted to do. When you go all in on the thing that you're most excited to write, you're more likely to actually show up for it and to be able to focus on it because you love it so much. Also, this goes back to the planning stuff. Stop planning more tasks than you have time and energy to do. Because when you're focused on, okay, I'm going to get my marketing going, my social media going, I'm going to do these 12 different projects, it's hard to focus like a laser. And our writing is often the thing that takes the back seat. So find a way to make your writing the priority. Also, stop catastrophizing. So I know this isn't going to be everyone's problem, but I hear a lot of writers talking about how they feel like if they don't do all the things as fast as possible, that they're just never going to get their career where it wants to go. But in the end, you can be a successful author without an Instagram account, but you can't really be a successful author without a book, right? So focus on what's most important. Also, stop being afraid you're going to take the wrong path and miss your big moment. If you have a desire of the things that you most want to write and you pour your joy into it, I fully believe that there's room for you to be a successful author. So when we infuse our writing with joy, we become magnets for the right readers. When we infuse our writing with fear, that we're going to miss out, that we're not going to write the right thing, that we're going to write something nobody wants to read, then we're going to be self-fulfilling prophecy there because we're not putting our joy and our, personality into it. So try to step away from the fear and instead go all in on the thing that lights you up and makes you excited. All right, number 8, shift your energy around your definition of success. So think about moments when you had the greatest success, the greatest relationships, the greatest opportunities of your life, and realize that the tighter we hold on to the idea of success that you feel is not coming, the more it begins to feel like a need. And this can kind of shift the feeling around success for us. So what I mean by this is if there's a certain level, like I just really want to be a full-time author, like let's say that is a feeling of success that you have, the more you start to feel like it's not coming, I'm never going to get there, and the negative thoughts that come along with that, the more it starts to feel like needy energy, like desperate energy. And when we get into desperate energy, we start to compromise our joy. We start to focus on missing out rather than what we could bring into our lives. So the same way that you look up to other authors and wish that you had that success, there's probably somebody out there wishing for what you have. Wow, she had the courage to get started. Oh my gosh, they actually have 100 followers, or they've actually sold 10 books. There's always somebody above us, and there's always somebody looking up to us. And so remembering that, so something that I changed for myself this year in terms of my mindset is cherry on top. So this was kind of my phrase for the year, was cherry on top energy. And I started to realize this idea of like, I look up to people and compare myself to them and feel like I'm falling short, but there are other people that look up to me that same way. And that's true for all of us here as well. There are people looking up to you thinking, gosh, they've really had the courage to follow their heart, or wow, they really got started with this thing, or oh my gosh, they got an agent. And so when we start to focus on the things we don't have, that can steal our joy. But when we start to focus on gratitude for the things that we do have, that can feel like the cherry on top of the sundae. So I started trying to reframe my own success of saying, wow, just writing, thank you for the cherries, Rita. Just being able to write the stories that I love, that is the joy right there. And whether like, who was it said earlier, I love the fan fiction. And then if it sells, that's a plus. That's cherry on top energy, right? If it sells, that's a plus. that is exciting. But when we come to a feeling of fear or neediness, or like, what if it never happens? What if I'm not good enough? We start to sort of bring this toxic negative energy into our writing. And that is kind of stealing what makes our writing magnetic to readers. And so if you can try to tell yourself the writing is the best part of it. I love the writing. And then if I can actually sell it and make a career for myself, then it is the cherry on top. That's just more and more excitement. All right, number 9, trust yourself. So one of my favorite quotes, and I could not find anyone to attribute this to. So if you know, let me know in the comments. A bird sitting on a tree is never afraid of the branch breaking because its trust is not on the branch, but on its own wings. So when we start thinking about bringing joy back into our lives and making a real career for ourselves, or writing to the best of our ability, sometimes what we have to begin to do at the core of our writing is trust ourselves. And so often what we're doing is we're looking at what everybody else is doing and we're judging ourselves, or we're kind of blaming ourselves or feeling guilty for how long it's taken to write this book, or for the mistakes that we've made in the past, or we're afraid we're doing it wrong. And in the end, instead of looking at what everyone else is doing, or what you're afraid of other people are saying you should be doing, or what you feel like other people are expecting from us, if we can begin to go within ourselves and really find the ability to trust that we know what's best for us, that we know we were put on this earth to tell stories. There's some part of you that knows you were meant for this, right? And so understanding that you don't have to be afraid that you won't make it. You don't have to be afraid that you're not right for this, or that you're not cut out for this, because you already know deep down in your heart that there is something here for you. That's why you're investing time in workshops like this. That's why you're investing money in Dabble and other softwares that you're using. And you're spending the time writing because there's a part of you that knows you are a storyteller, and you know that you can do this. And when we focus on everybody else, then when that branch breaks, we fall right with it. But when we focus and trust on ourselves, there's really nothing that can hold us back. And so starting to cultivate self-trust can be super important to finding our joy again and infusing that joy and what we love into our writing. And the final tip is to believe it's inevitable. There is no time limit on your success. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to write the book, or how long it takes you to figure out what it is that you most want to write. There's no time limit on your success. You don't have to meet anyone else's deadlines. You don't have to publish within a certain time frame, or you're going to lose your opportunity. There is no time limit. It's just about trusting yourself and finding your way. And sometimes I think that part of what can steal our joy is that we feel like we're too late. I'm too old. I'm too late. I'm getting started into the indie industry too late, or there's not enough room for me in traditional publishing, or whatever. We can start to have a lot of these fears, but really starting to believe that I'm not too late. I'm exactly right on time. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. And when we can start to really feel that, then we allow more room for the joy and less room for the fear. So stop pouring sand in your gas tank and thinking it's going to help you make better books. It's going to help you sell faster. There's literally no one else in the world like you. There's no other author that can tell the stories that you can tell, that has your unique perspective or your unique ideas. Everything that you have experienced in your life, all of the things that you have loved and consumed and been inspired by, makes your unique stories unlike anyone else's. And that means that your success as you is inevitable, right? No one else can be you. And in the end, it's your joy and the passion you pour into your work that makes it most magnetic and most resonant to your readers. So often what we talk about when we're talking about sales and marketing and things like that is to focus on the tropes, focus on the ads, focus on those things. And, yes, those things are important. It's not good to ignore the market. But in the end, the thing that will make the biggest difference And I have seen this, I have coached thousands of students, and I've seen this over and over again, as well as in my own career. The thing that will make you the most successful is your own spark, your own unique perspective, your own voice that you're putting into it. And so the more you can listen to these tips and begin to infuse everything you're doing with your own joy and your own magnetic like ideas, all the things that light you up about the stories that you're telling, what seems fun about those stories or the themes you most want to explore, that's what's going to make your work magnetic. That's what's going to make it resonate with readers. And that is what is going to be the silver bullet to your success. So yay, I actually made it through in the time. If you want to follow me, I see a lot of our kind of Heart Breathings people in the chat. So thank you so much for joining. But if you are not part of our Heart Breathings community, youtube.com/heartbreathings is where you can find me. I have almost 80,000 subscribers. So I would love to add you to that list if you'd like to, if this really resonated with you. Heartbreathings.com is my website, or pretty much at Heartbreathings anywhere you can find me there. So yay, there's Hank.
It probably would help if I unmuted my mic.
Yeah.
Sarah, what an incredible presentation. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We talk so much, so often about the mechanics of writing and all of the ins and outs of storytelling and story structure and plot and all of that stuff. But none of that matters if you're not having a good time. And I've gotten to know so many authors over the last decade of doing author podcasts and things like that, and I've never met one single successful author who didn't get into it because they believed they had something to say, something that they wanted to share, a story that they felt like the world would be better because their story was in it. And really, we can get so bogged down in the day-to-day mechanics of the business that sometimes it's important to just remember why we got into this and why we wanted to be storytellers in the first place. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is true. And I think, depending on where you are in your journey, some of you may be in a place where you're like, oh, I'm all in the joy. I'm there. Like, this is super fun. But then sometimes the deeper we all go through, our different periods of our careers. And sometimes as you get deeper into it, it can feel like you have to start compromising some of that to be what the market wants, to try to make those sales. And I feel super passionate about getting back always to that core of who am I as a writer, and how do I put my unique perspective and really believe in the stories that I'm trying to tell, because that is ultimately what's going to attract the most readers to your writing. Even if it's quirky, even if it's different, even if other people will say, oh, that's never going to sell. It's almost always every story that I hear of people that are really making, like, I have friends making 7 figures as authors, and they all have that story, which honestly, many of us believed would never like, who makes 7 figures as an author? But it's a reality right now that there's more authors making a living, whether that be $20,000 a year or, 2 million. And it so often comes from that place of like, I'm writing the core of what my unique voice is and what I truly love. And it's almost like you have to keep bringing yourself back to that center of joy and passion and the stories you most want to tell. And I think it's super, super important.
Well, and at the end of the day, what's more important, 7 figures or an amazing bookshelf like you have behind you?
We moved into this house a couple of years ago, and I just added these bookshelves this year. And just having my own books on display back here has made a difference in my own confidence of like, oh yeah, I remember I can do this. Yeah. Like I went through a period of time where I was like, what if I can't do this anymore? What if I lost my spark? And it took some time to get back to it, which is probably why I love talking about joy, because it makes all the difference. It really does.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this special workshop. We've got more live events this week. Tomorrow, we have a writing sprint at 12:30 Eastern time, as every workday this month. Then at 3 p.m. Eastern, I'm changing time zones in my head on the fly. We've got Scott Moon who's going to talk about the author life. And Scott is someone, he's a science fiction writer, but has been a published author for like 20 years and bivocational, worked a full-time job as a policeman while also pursuing his writing life. And for the last 3, 4, 5 years, I forget what it is exactly, he's been a full-time author. Going to talk about the whole spectrum there. Then Thursday, Doug, I, and Josh will be doing our 60-day writing challenge show for this week. And then Friday, Doug and I will be taking your questions live. Anything that you have to bring to us, we'll field those questions, and as usual, there's about a 50% chance you'll get a good answer. So,
Yeah.
Doug, do
Or
you
a
have
rant.
anything to anything to add before we say goodbye to everyone, Doug?
No, just a big thank you, Sarah. I know some of the comments at the very start of people remembering when they had that dream about being a writer the first time. There were a lot of
Yeah.
comments about, I had the dream, but I never thought that was possible. But you've shown us and told us time and again throughout this presentation that it's almost more possible now than ever before to take this joy in writing and make a career out of it if you want to. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
Yeah, incredible. Thank you so much, Sarah, for
Thanks for
spending some
having
time
me.
with us today. Yeah, and thank you everyone for joining us. This is like Doug's said at the beginning. The workshops are a normal part of your Dabble Premium membership. We do at least one a month. A lot of times we have one of our in-house workshops and an outside guest speaker like Sarah who shares with us. So you never know what you're going to get from month to month, but we're always generating new content for you, and we appreciate all of you joining us today. And we are entering that final third of the writing challenge month. I hope that it's going well for you, and if you need to get some words in, we'll be here at 12:30 tomorrow for Writing Sprint Wednesdays. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks all.